Picture, if you will, a drop of water falling in space. It's the first raindrop. It's going to hit this dry rock here, and you'll see shatters, fragments of water flying everywhere. Here's another raindrop coming. Here it's going to fall into a thin film, a thin layer of water that's built up. And we're going to see the splash is something very different this time. This thin sheet comes up like a crown and flies off, and then it comes back in. Two drops, essentially the same. Two very different splashes depending on where they fell. And so now you're asking, well, suppose it's not a thin layer of water, suppose it's a puddle, it's been raining for a while. What's going to happen now? Is it going to be different? And yes, we get that crown as we had before, and there's a dimple in the surface of the water, and water doesn't like having its surface dimpled down, and like a trampoline, it's going to fling back up this jet of water that'll go flying into the sky and come to a peak and fall back down. And as I look at that, I see that looks just like a drop of water falling into a basin. Will I get another crown? I do, smaller. And the jet this time will be very, very different. Thin and fast and flying up and breaking into small pieces. Three drops of water, each essentially the same as the other. Falling in three environments, three very different splashes come out of it, each beautiful and each different. And what I find striking is that this has been going on since the first rainfall on the planet. This has been going on throughout the entire history of the human race, and we were unaware of it until about 1900, when an Englishman named Arthur Worthington took these photos of splashes, and we began to see what was going on there, the undiscovered. And we see here 9 images of a splash in milk, and you look at that and say, wow, how did he do it? How did he get that one drop splashing like that? And the answer is twofold. First, it's not 9 images of one drop. It's 9 images of 9 separate drops of water. And the second thing is, how did he get it? And the answer is he had a way to set a strobe light, a flash, to go off at the precise instant he wanted in one splash. And he took that first image up there. And then he released a second drop and took the second image with a flash just a little bit later in the process, and then the third and the fourth, and on you go. And I'm not here to talk about the fluid dynamics that make these splashes so beautiful. I'm here instead to tell you something. I'm here to tell you that you, right there, you can take photos like Worthington's. No. You can take photos better than Worthington's. And I know you can do this for many reasons. First, we have much better flashes than he had. And we have much, much better cameras than he had. And we have, so many muches better electronics than he had to synchronize the flash to the event. And let me tell you how you can do this, okay? You're going to need a few things. Let's go over it. You're going to need a camera, and it can be a digital or film, doesn't matter. The important thing about the camera here is that it has to give you full manual control of the camera. And you go, well, what do you mean by that? Well, by full manual control, I mean you have to be able to control the aperture, the iris that opens and closes, to control the amount of light getting through. You have to have manual control of the focus, and you have to have manual control over the shutter that opens to allow light in and then closes to keep light out. You're going to need a strobe. This is the Vivitar Model 283. It's an old strobe. It's readily available on eBay, and it will do the job just fine with minor modification. And here's how you're going to set things up, okay? We've got the camera on the left. We have the strobe on the right. We have my rock down at the bottom, which is going to be our target, and the eyedropper up above. And now that you have everything positioned, you're going to turn the lights out, and the room will be dark. In the dark, you open the shutter of the camera, and if there was any light, it would get in, but the room is dark, so there's no light and there's no exposure on the film or the imager. Then, in the dark, you release the drop falls down, and at the right moment, the strobe fires and turns off, And now you can close the shutter, turn the lights on, and see what you got. You got a good one here, right? I love, by the way, if you look, you can see in that thin sidewall of water of the crown, you can see there are ripples traveling up and down within the sidewall. It's just gorgeous what all goes on there. Now, there's a trick, and the trick, of course, is how do you get the strobe to go off at the right time? And you need a little bit of electronics here to set delays, and there are the electronics. And I'm going to show you with a little cartoon how it all works, and I want you to see how the pieces interconnect, okay? So we've got the photo where you can see the camera and the strobe and the rock, and down below are the icons I'll use for the animation of the camera and the strobe and the substrate. Why substrate? Well, substrate is just the thing underneath, and you can use the rock or some other rock. There are a lot out there. Or maybe instead of a rock, you could use a twig or the edge of a coin or, I don't know, your imagination will come up with something. And there is the icon I'll use for the delay timer, and now we'll put it all together. The delay timer is set up to make the strobe go off. We'll put in the eyedropper so we can get our drop of water. And clearly there's one thing missing. The delay timer has no way of knowing when the drop is going by, and we're going to have to fix that. We're going to fix that with a little LED sending a narrow beam of light into a photodetector. And as long as the light gets through, the delay unit knows there's no drop. When the drop falls down and breaks that light beam, the delay timer can start. Okay? Now, I know one of you out there, probably more than one of you, is going, wait a minute, Jim. You said the room is dark. LEDs are not dark. And you're right. You busted me. They're not. But in this case, the LED is narrowly focused, and the light's going into the detector. None of the LED light is getting down to the place where the camera is actually looking. And in that case, from the camera's perspective, the room is still dark. It also helps that we keep the LED fairly dim, just to be safe. So here we go. You ready? We're going to release the drop. It's going to fall. It's going to break that light beam. The delay timer starts. Now in animations, just like in cartoons, the drop hangs in space while I talk, but in real life it keeps falling. The timer goes down, pop. There's the image. The room is dark again. You close the shutter, and you got your image. And this is doable. And not just splashes and drops, it turns out. Anything falling can break that beam. But a really cool one turns out to be a water balloon bouncing on a table. Right? The water balloon falls. You see that little red light going across. Instead of an LED, I had a red laser pointer this time, and it left its mark on the balloon, but that's okay. The balloon hits. When the balloon hits the substrate, you see there are these ripples that go running up the surface of the balloon, kind of like a beehive almost. The balloon gets really, really flat. Sometimes the center of the balloon will actually bottom out on the table, and you'll have this ring of water balloon. And then it comes bouncing back off. And you don't have to use that light beam to trigger the strobe. Sound works as well. You could have a microphone, and when a sufficiently loud sound comes in, the strobe goes off with the appropriate delay. And what makes a nice loud sound? Well, it turns out when you pop a balloon, that makes a loud sound. So you have a person hold a balloon, and you have them hold a microphone in their hand, and they pop the balloon, the pop hits the mic, and the strobe goes off. Kaboom. Right? That's what a balloon looks like when it pops. It tears vertically, and the edges come peeling back. The back part of the balloon has no idea that anything has happened yet. Give it about another 2/1000ths of a second. It'll know. And you wait about another 4/1000 since a little bit of rubber just flying away. Okay? So that's cool. What happens if I add a bit of delay? So the strobe's a little later in the process? Oh, that's what I get. Right? So, let me show you another fun thing. Water drop goes in just as before, crown, we get the dimple, we're going to have a jet coming out, but what you don't know is we've released a second drop of water behind the first. And now as that jet comes flying up, exactly. But with the strobe, this is with the high-speed video camera running 8,000 frames a second. If you've got $100,000, I'll tell you where to buy it. But instead, you can use the strobe and the still camera and the beam break and all, and you can capture any point in that process that you like. I'll show you one that a student and I liked. right? So this is a collision of the drop coming down onto the jet coming up, and again, you get that beautiful collisional disk. You see all the ripples going along around the outside. In this case, I happen to have a pretty rock in the lab to make the backdrop. You can come up with something completely different. To get this shot, we took about 30. Some were not very good. Many were decent. A few were pretty good, and this was the best. Now, I have said many times that you can do this. I don't know if you believe me, though. But let me show you how I know you can take really, really cool photos this way. And I know that because I'm going to introduce you to Andrea Lenore. Andrea lives in Kentucky, and she was in 5th grade last year when this photo was taken. And she's happy, and she's happy because she's holding the first place prize for her photo that she took and entered into a competition of colliding water drops. And you see there's some interesting red going on in there, and I don't know if she has a colored filter over a strobe or if she added water in the dye. I just don't know, but I like it. It's good. But what strikes me about this image is reflected in the water, you see the logo of the National Beta Club, the group sponsoring the competition. She had printed it out backwards, set that card with the logo up. Here's the basin of water, and the camera is seeing that logo reflected in the water surface. I've never done this before, but I'm inspired. I'm going to go do it. I know I can because she did it, and so can you. Thank you.